Hello and welcome to another episode of Parker's Previews powered by the Hammer. I'm your host, Parker, and here on this show, we're going to take a look at some college football matchups using data, analytics, advanced stats to help us be better consumers of college football content and smarter investors when it comes to making plays and approaching these games. This is week 6 of the college football season. This is show number 2. Yesterday, I talked about Iowa State and Kansas State. And today we've got another really good matchup that I think is going to be a lot of fun. Before we get to that, make sure that you're following the show on YouTube. Make sure that you're following at Parker's Previews on Twitter, at Stats Wars me. I'll post all my graphs and thoughts and you can interact, ask questions there. And if you are an auditory person as opposed to a visual person and want to hear this podcast or hear this show in podcast form, you can get it wherever you get podcasts. Just search Parker's Previews. Now, with a little bit of housekeeping out of the way, let's move to our second matchup this week. Air Force travels to Utah State. This one, going with the Service Academy, going back to the well. I've stayed away from Air Force the last couple of weeks. Normally, I like to bet Air Force, especially in a season like this where they're so developed. They're kind of at the top of their cycle. They've got an experienced quarterback in Haas Daniels and, a lot of continuity, but they've been injured the last couple of weeks and haven't looked as good. The matchups just haven't felt right. So excited to be able to bet Air Force again because I do love to root for them. And I think we've got a really good spot. They're traveling to Utah State. On the season, Air Force is 4-1. Utah State is 1-4. Against the spread, Air Force is 3-2. Aforementioned, they've had some struggles. And Utah State is 1-4. Air Force is scoring 32.8 points per game. They're allowing 14.8 points per game. Utah State is scoring 17.6, but they're giving up 36.4 points per game. In the last 6 games between these two teams, Air Force is 5-1 against the spread. You would have won 3.55 units had you bet on Air Force every time. So pretty good trends in this game, pretty good matchup here as well. Want to dive very quickly into each team's season just to kind of give a picture of where we're at. Air Force, like I mentioned, had some issues with some injuries. They had some defenders out specifically in that Wyoming game. They had just absolutely ran over Northern Iowa and then a bad Colorado team. They lose on the road to Wyoming. And then against Nevada, they won by 28, and then played Navy very close, but came out on the right side there in a Service Academy matchup. So the story of Air Force's season has been blowing out bad teams, and then they were injured against Wyoming. I think we've got another opportunity for that right here. Utah State, on the other hand, has just not been what they wanted, not what we expected out of Blake Anderson's team after the year they had last season. They fall down 2 or 3 scores to UConn, come back and win that game. They get blown out by Alabama, didn't even score a point, 0-55. They lose the week after Alabama, which fluent college football bettors know the week after Alabama is the time to fade a team. They lose to Weber State, FCS, 7-35. Then they take a loss to UNLV, so that's back-to-back home losses. And then they lose on the road last week to BYU in a game where they came out, I think they consider that a rivalry game. So they came out hot and were able to put up a couple points, but really just couldn't sustain anything. They have backup quarterback playing in there. We'll talk about him in depth here in a minute. But 4 straight losses, all by double digits for Utah State. Looks like things are pretty bad. And while they might be able to get things on the road next week fixed, at Colorado State, this does not appear to be their matchup. So let's do some first principles and we'll dive into the rosters and the breakdowns this week. So 83% win probability for Air Force, 17% win probability for Utah State. Have this projected as about Air Force 27, Utah State 14. So a 13-point game relative to a 10.5 point spread. I am going to convince you with the numbers and the data that Air Force minus 10.5, minus 11, if you can get it, is a really good play. excuse me, minus 10.5, minus 10 if you can get it. Certainly you would want the point in the other direction. Is a really good play here. So Air Force is 11th in EPA per play margin. Utah State is 111th. On offense, Air Force ranks 9th in per play efficiency compared to 88th for Utah State's defense. And Utah State's offense is 109th compared to Air Force's 48th ranked defense. So better on both sides of the ball. Air Force slightly leans towards offense. In terms of net points per drive, Air Force is scoring 2.62 and they're only giving up 1.42. Their net points per drive is 1.20, which is 21st in the nation. Remember that net points per drive takes the expected value of your field goal attempts and all of your touchdowns divided by your drives. On the other hand, Utah State is only scoring 1.70 points per drive. That's 94th in the nation. They're allowing 3.05, more than a field goal in expectation per drive, which is 107th. They rank 112th in net points per drive at negative 1.3. So if you did some simple math there, just kind of, again, back of the envelope, looking at different things, in a 12-possession game, we'd expect Air Force to be up 14.4 points, and we'd expect Utah State to be down about 15 points. So some rough accounting there suggests a double-digit spread just on the first basic stats, not even the advanced stats. Net field position, Air Force not doing great. I'll explain that split a little bit as well. Above their 58th in net field position. Utah State is 95th. And in terms of game control, Air Force really good at controlling games. This stat that I kind of coined, this echo ratio that looks at the ratio of productive drives. It was designed for these service academy teams. They're 65.8% echo ratio. It's a measure of game control, is 5th in the nation, whereas Utah State's 38.6 is 113th. So obviously we're favoring Utah as a money line, but I think they'll be able to cover this double-digit spread. Let's dive into Air Force's offense versus Utah State's defense, and we'll talk about why I think this is a good matchup. So Air Force, 128th in rush rate over expected. They're rushing 84.4% more than the average team. Obviously, Service Academy, that's what they're going to do. They're going to be really selective about their passing. But one thing that's really encouraging, they're super efficient in the rush. 0.26 EPA per rush. That's 9th in the nation. And they're 4th in EPA per pass, averaging 0.48. So almost a half a point of expected value increase every time Air Force passes the ball. That's going to spell trouble for Utah State, who's 92nd in EPA per pass allowed, 75th in EPA per rush. I think that only benefits Air Force because they know Utah State, the Aggies know the Air Force is going to run a lot. What they're going to do is they're going to crowd the box. They're going to try and defend that triple option, and that's going to widen open this pass game for Hazik Daniels. One really just absolutely hilarious stat about Air Force. Their leading receiver is averaging almost 21 yards per attempt. Or average depth of target, excuse me. So they are throwing the ball just absolutely downfield. He has 200 yards on just five receptions, so almost over 40 yards per reception. They're just chucking it downfield to him. That's a really great connection. They're not going to do it a lot. Obviously, if they did it more, those numbers would come down, but still really fun to see a guy with over 20 ADOT and over 40 yards per reception. Looking at the drive-based stats here, 51.9% of Air Force's drives end in a quality possession. That's 43rd in the nation. Pretty good efficiency there. And then in finishing drives, they're 46th. So pretty good split there. They're finishing drives at about the rate they're generating them, which is what you would expect. On the flip side, Utah State, 124th, they're allowing a quality possession on 65.6% of drives. So almost exactly 2/3 of opponent drives end in a quality possession. Now, their points per quality possession is 55th in the nation, 4.38. But because they're allowing so many, it's not like they're just getting beat. It's not like these big explosive plays are killing them. It's like people are lining up, just marching the ball downfield. So not super encouraging there for Utah State. Field position does worry me a little bit for Air Force. They start on average 108th in field position at their own 26.9 yard line. Utah State 70th, allowing opponents to start at the 29.5. But Air Force's efficiency is so good. The way they're designed to run is to run a lot of these plays, have a high success rate, fourth in offensive success rate, and kind of move the ball, and then try a big play. If they can't get that big pass play, then they're going to catch you on, they're going to be able to clean that up on third downs. One thing I really like here, if we look at kind of the splits in late and early downs, they're 6th in early downs EPA, 11th in third and fourth down success. So not a huge split. Utah State's defense, 112th on third and fourth down success. So Air Force is going to have plenty of opportunities to, try and get that big play, to move the ball early and then clean it up against a really bad third and fourth down team. So I think Air Force is going to score at will against Utah State just based on these kind of first principles. If we go to the other side of the ball, Utah State has had some injuries. Logan Bonner is out this season. Last week they played Cooper Legas against BYU. He completed 53% of his passes, 4.7 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 2 more turnover-worthy plays. So not very excited about that. In the pass game, they are 84th in success rate and 98th in EPA per pass. Some negative plays have weighed down that EPA. EPA per rush, they're 115th. They're 118th in rushing success rate. So neither efficient nor explosive in the run game. Air Force's defense actually does a little bit better against the rush than the pass. They're 40th in EPA per rush, 64th in EPA per pass. Some of that has to do with selection, but honestly, not a huge drop off there. Air Force, true to what a service academy wants to do, they're just going to get opportunities and then prevent you from getting opportunities. They're 3rd in echo rate and quality possession rate in the nation. Utah State's offense is 89th. Additionally, Air Force really good at starting field position on defense, holding opponents to their own 26.2. That's 18th in the nation. Utah State 102nd. So Air Force has this field position advantage on defense, and Utah State, bad defense, bad offense as well, is going to be harder to march down the field. The last thing that really, really worries me about Utah State and makes you think they won't be able to score a lot is they're 73rd on early downs EPA, 124th on third and fourth down success. The Aggies are 21st in percent of first downs on first and second down. But that's actually bad because it means that coupled with the third and fourth down success rate means, they're not getting they're not getting a first down. If they don't stumble on a first down on early downs, they're not getting it. Air Force is a little struggling on early downs. They're 73rd in early downs EPA, but they're 31st in third and fourth down success. So Utah State is not going to hit on early downs often, and then they're not going to be able to clean up against Air Force overall. So looking at these stats, looking at the narrative here, I see a combination of an Air Force team kind of looking to get right. Even though they're 4-1, I think they think they should have won that Wyoming game were it not for some injuries. And you look at a Utah State team that doesn't really do one thing well. Sometimes some bad G5 schools will do one thing well, and that might be enough to stay away from betting them or betting them as a dog. But here, a little bit of a letdown spot for Utah State after a big rivalry game last week with BYU, but also maybe a little letdown spot with Air Force after having played a hard-fought game against Navy. I think Air Force is looking to get right here. They should be able to march down against this Utah State defense, do whatever they want. And I don't think the Utah State offense is going to be successful enough on early downs to avoid these negative script third down situations, which is really going to put them behind the sticks, really going to inhibit their efficiency. I don't think they'll score very much. So you can get this Air Force minus 10.5, Air Force minus 10. I would take this to 11. I would take this to 11.5. Might bet it again, but certainly if you can get it at 10, I would snag that immediately. 52% of the bets on Air Force, but 80% of the money, if that means anything to you. So definitely a fun bet here. I think this should be kind of a cleanse your palate game for Air Force. Get back on track, see how high functioning this offense can be. Will be a fun matchup for sure. Thanks so much for listening today. Make sure you check out videos from yesterday about Iowa State and Kansas State. Have another one tomorrow with another play. And thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you next time.